Your ancestors can help you to heal.
And I know why.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to And I Know Why, the podcast where we talk about real life and real healing.
Okay, guys, in this episode, you're going to know why you should connect with your ancestors and how you can have a healthy and special relationship with them. So let's get to it.
Okay, go for it, girl.
Okay, awesome. So I want to start with the why, because I feel like when you're trying to do something in life, if you don't know why you're doing it, first of all, you're not going to keep doing it, right?
You're not going to be motivated.
You're not going to be motivated. And most likely it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And I feel like, everybody has ancestors, right? Everybody has people that came before them, and we're all going to end up having people that come after us.
Yeah.
Even if like you yourself don't have children, like your siblings will have kids or whatever, right? There's always going to be more people in your lineage. So I think, today we want to talk about ancestors, and I feel like in our Western culture, we don't really have a space where we talk about ancestors, where we talk about how to connect with them. And in a lot of other cultures, it's more a part of how they do their everyday life, or a part of like specific holidays and specific times of year.
Right.
It's just
but
more
also,
there.
I think that it's more in other countries. A lot of them live on the same land that their families were on.
Absolutely.
Their ancestors, they all have stories. They own this or they own that, or you get to move back to the place that your ancestors were from. A lot of times they encourage that in other countries.
Yeah, or even having like ancestral homes. Like that's not really something that in the United States we don't
That doesn't
have
happen
that
very often. Yeah.
There are definitely people that do, but it's not going super far back. And even like the Native American things that we have, a lot of those things were destroyed.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's not a lot of that ability to super connect. So anyway, we wanted to create a space to talk about things here with you guys right now. I feel like growing up culturally, socially, I felt like I was kind of in the dark about connecting with my ancestors or what to do about it. Besides that, I like to hear stories about them. And I remember watching Pocahontas and the scene where she first goes to talk to Grandmother Willow. And I just felt something spark in me of like, oh my gosh, I want this. And I didn't know what it was. At first, as a little kid, I was like, am I wanting to like talk to a tree? Is that like the thing that I'm craving right now? Yeah. And I think I even remember kind of talking to you about it and asking like, why is that tree talking, and not really having, trying to figure out what was going on there. But so there was something inside me that kind of understood that concept of, connecting with ancestors and ancestors being able to help provide knowledge, but also the support and comfort that Grandmother Willow gives in that movie.
Well, and I remember when you went through that, and I think probably most children at that time who have seen that movie since, Grandmother Willow speaks to them in their heart. It's because she also teaches about grounding into who you are.
Yes.
She encourages you to understand what is more than just your experience, right?
Yes, definitely.
So I think that is just. It's so good. And I think little children usually figure that. They sense it, right? They just don't know why, like you said.
And,
that's cool.
I'm wondering, have you guys felt that way? And if you have felt that way, whether you've done like ancestor work now or not, I'd love to know what that time was for you. So if you comment that below or send us a message on TikTok or Instagram about that, because we would absolutely love to know about that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No. It wasn't until I was an adult that I became really interested in understanding the idea of my ancestors and what they had to do in my life, and really starting to crave the connection. I spent a lot of time and energy of learning why I should connect with my ancestors, but it wasn't until I was much older. I think it was probably about maybe 10 years ago, just right around there, where I really started diving into it. Until then, it was my family, it's not exactly the people you'd wish to connect with. And so I was like, let's not let's not do that yet. You
Right.
know? And I had to work more on forgiveness and trust. My family and my ancestors were messy, right? They had their own traumas, and just like I did, but it really was messy. And I found that what I gained, or when I gained the understanding that I didn't have to be grateful for all of my ancestors, and that I didn't have to connect with all of them, then that is when I started saying, okay, I can do this. I can figure out what their place is in my life, you know, and find that forgiveness and find that understanding. And I learned in keeping proper boundaries that I could find a way to have their relationships enhance my life. You know, their relationship with me and their experiences enhance my life. And really, sometimes it surprised me the ways that they ended up helping. And I want to call it kind of like buoy me up. You know, they kind of, in some ways, they nurtured me or buoyed me up in very difficult times. So that was a long time coming.
Yeah. And I think that in healing and in connecting either to yourself or to your ancestors, there is that surprise factor of, you know, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is affecting so much more than I anticipated. Or even like, you know, I've recently started doing a lot of Qigong, and it's not just physical. And there's that, even though I know that, and you've been doing it for a long time, and I've known that it's more than physical. Experiencing it is something else. And it's the same with, you know, connecting with ancestors properly. So basically, you guys, we're going to give you a few steps, or not steps, I guess they're kind of a list, right, of why you should care, and kind of, you know, help you guys to understand, you know, through our experiences and our stories, you know, how can you start doing this in a healthy way?
Yeah, we want it to percolate in your brain. You're not gonna, just like I didn't come to the conclusion that yes, definitely I needed to bond with my ancestors right away. In fact, when I first knew about it was probably 25 years ago was when I first started hearing about it, and I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, but so all of us are going to come in at different levels and different willingness, and some of us might just want to dip our toe in it, and others might just let it percolate for a while and think about it and see where it fits for them.
Yeah, and I think it will fit differently for you in different times of your life.
Yes.
Because you've got other things that you're doing, and you know, you and I both feel that people need to have proper boundaries with themselves and with other people, and your healing has to participate in proper boundaries. And you can't go dive into trying to heal your ancestors when you haven't done anything for yourself.
Oh my gosh, please don't do that.
So anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, here's, you know, 4 reasons basically why you should care about all these people who have lived before you, who've died, all these dead people. Okay. So 1, you have shared DNA with them. And by the way, we're going to go into each of these. So I'm just going to list them. Okay. Shared DNA. 2, you have shared experiences with them. 3, you have awareness, or you guys will share an awareness and an understanding, as you explore connecting with them, understanding their stories and understanding who they are, you gain an awareness and an understanding of your own struggles in yourself, as well as your own strengths. And number 4 is that you gain the ability to lay the groundwork for healing for the past, the present, and for the future.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with shared DNA. I want to start that way, I guess, because it's the easiest to understand for those of you who are brand new to this topic. It doesn't have to be, there's lots of research out there, and more is coming all the time. So I want you to understand that it's not just our spiritual wisdom and guidance that we want you to understand. for those of you that are more left brain, there really are studies out there, and they're amazing, and they teach us so much. But it's all about how our DNA affects us and our ancestors' DNA too. So,
and I think that, DNA and ancestors, like this stuff is pretty forward right now in that people are doing like ancestry.com and like doing these different things on trying to learn about where they come from or what aspects of their DNA show up in them.
Yeah.
Because, DNA is tricky in that, like, it's not just this straight thing. You get stuff kind of from all over. It skips generations. It has, like, all over the place. And it's always fun, I think, DNA-wise, to look even at some pictures that we have and to see, oh my gosh, I have things that look like this ancestor, or to hear stories about them and find out that you have similar personality things and you have an understanding like, oh, we have some shared DNA about this.
Yeah, I think it's so fun. Like, for instance, so my mom, though she didn't think of it and didn't say it like a compliment at the time, she would always say, "You're just like Aunt Marge," who was her sister. "You're just like your Aunt Marge." And I always knew when she was saying that she wasn't trying to be nice about it. But Aunt Marge was a lot like me. She was very straightforward. She cared very deeply, but she was also very focused on her accountability and her responsibility and keeping really safe, healthy boundaries because of her life that she had grown up in. And so consequently, she was very maternal and taking care of her children. She watched over them well, and she tried to make sure that everyone was always safe. But she was like straightforward, didn't beat around the bush. And my mom always thought that was such a real downer.
A trial to endure. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, I know. She was fun.
And I think it's super fun, to learn about, those personality shares. And I think, something that even just physically, right, that you can look at would be things like from injuries that people have had, and that it can hurt the DNA and then show up in later generations.
Yes.
Like my dad cut his left eye. Well, exploded. What I mean by cut is shrapnel.
Yeah, he made
a cannon.
He and his brother made homemade cannon. And like after, I don't know how many times, I think every time was a luckiness.
Right, they didn't.
So many times. But the final time it exploded on he and his brother, and shrapnel came and sliced his eye and his retina. But consequently, he also has a droop in his eye right here.
Yep.
So go ahead.
So he got the droop, and then it affected his DNA.
Yeah.
And I have the droop, and my brother Colin has the droop.
Yeah.
And also interestingly is that my brother Colin also injured that same eye and emphasized he has a scar that emphasizes the droop. So,
and they both have a scar right
there, same place.
So funny.
So sometimes, there's the energetic and the physical that show up that way. Yeah. One interesting story that I heard. So they've been doing a lot of different research, like you were saying, on epigenetics and genetics.
Yes.
And how they transfer to people. So there was this lady that experienced an extremely high fear of trains, and she had not had any negative experiences with trains, nothing. And I don't even know if she'd ever been on a train before. I think what happened was she went to get on a train for the first time and had never known she had any issues, tried to get on, and I think she ended up having a panic attack or something, Yeah. And she, I guess, either was already participating in the study or they ended up studying her later or something. But it turned out that like 4 generations back, her grandfather had been killed by a train. Oh my gosh. And so...
Did she know anything?
She didn't know
history?
that. She didn't know that, but it was so impactful to her that she looked into it, or you know, I don't quite
That's
remember.
huge,
But
impactful in your mind as well as your spirit. When you find out that connection,
yeah.
that's like, what just happened to me and why is this so important to me?
Yes.
It's so crazy. That's amazing.
Oh, I just remembered another fun genetic story would be Taggart, my brother Taggart, my older brother, and his feet.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know we were going to tell this story. So I'm trying to remember all that it was called. So
Oh,
Taggart had,
bunions.
well, it's not bunions.
It's not
though.
just
It was-
bunions.
It was his tendons. There we go.
His Achilles tendons
They
weren't
were
long enough.
short. So they had to do a lengthening surgery. But before that ever happened, so he was a little guy and he's walking on his tiptoes. And someone may have this issue already that's watching this even. But his tendons did not stretch. And because they did not lengthen as he was growing, he consistently walked on his toes, which created that bunion-like thing. But really, what happened is, if this is his big toe, this is how it grew out, where all the rest were over
Off
here.
to the side for those of you
like
that can't
this.
see.
Yeah. So he's like this way, and then after the surgery, it started growing this way. But in the meantime,
So it grew away from his toes,
Yep.
and then after the surgery,
it
it started
moving
growing
back, and that
back.
created the bunion part, right? So, but in the meantime, in his life as a kid, he's walking on his tippy toes, basically. Had great balance, by the way. So,
and his calves are killer.
his calves were amazing. So we find out it was probably around 6 or 7 years old. We're talking to my mother-in-law, his grandma on my husband's side. And she says, well, her great-grandpa had the same problem. And we're like, really? What was it? What happened? So apparently for him, so his toe grows out like this, right? So for him, and this is in pioneer times, okay? So just get that, because this is not like modern things. He's out in the wilderness and he's got his wife and his kids, and he's a quiet do-it-yourself man, and he's in tons of pain because you can't wear shoes when your toe goes out
It's so
like
far
that,
away from
so
your other
far.
toes. Your
And-
big toe, by the way, we're talking about the big toe.
his big toe, big toe. And he goes out to the chopping block and takes an axe, chops it off, and then goes to the other foot, chops it off, all in one time. I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world kind of person did my son come from? It was so funny, but it was shocking too, right?
Yeah.
But that, just knowing that though, and knowing that someone in our family line had dealt with that same thing, actually gave me as a mom some peace too. I don't know quite how it helped Taggart, or if it did, if he has, some sympathy towards his ancestor for that. But
they have that shared.
yeah, they have that shared concept, that shared DNA that they both struggled because of it. They both had some very difficult times in their life because of that.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
So that one was, I love that one because it shows how strong, what I want you guys to understand as we're talking about DNA and these physical things that you can see, like, you don't always make a choice, right? You don't make a choice about what things show up for you. And as we move into this topic, you're going to see how that's also energetic and emotional and, all those kinds of things. So I do want to talk about semen, though, because they are doing so many cool things with semen right now, you guys. And I'm not talking about semen face masks, okay? We are not talking about that. So, sorry, my dog, Coconut's in here, and she tooted. That was stinky. Okay, so they are doing a lot of different studies right now on the pathway that the semen travels and how that impacts semen, as well as the health of the father in the day of impregnating, that year, and then the course of the life. and how that affects the semen. Because what they're finding is that they thought before that it was just kind of like the semen went through and you just got what you got, and that there wasn't really any.
Well, they kind of call it like luck of the draw.
Yeah,
that's the term I would often hear from people when they're talking about their kids and they got red hair or something like, oh, it's luck of the draw. And I'm like, okay. That's the way I grew up anyway.
So they thought like, physical health and all these kinds of things were more of a chance concept, and that it didn't really change dependent on like if the father had recently gotten super healthy or had started or had recently gained a lot of weight. Like they didn't think that had a super large effect, but what they're finding now is that it does, and that even the emotional state of the man when he comes and impregnates her, that actually affects the semen. So the studies are really interesting because, how they actually started asking this question was for women who are infertile, right? And then they do this separate, like insemination and stuff.
Right.
But the semen then doesn't travel through.
Right. It doesn't have that journey.
It doesn't take the same journey. And they found that the semen was different. And they were like, whoa, why is it different? It shouldn't be different. It should be the same. So that's what kind of started them on that research and figuring out that, oh my gosh, okay, the daily life of the man can change how that happens, and the physical health of the man on that day for the last year and over his life, that those things are all taken into account, and how he feels that day gets put into the sperm.
The genetics.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. And just for the women out there, it's similar concepts for women. We don't have the same, like our womb and our tubes and stuff. Yes, there's a journey that most of it needs to go through, but it's actually the moment of insemination also what she's feeling. And we know,
and how she feels about the man. Like there's a lot of really interesting
what's
things.
happening at the time, what the sex was like, all these things. Like if you've ever had sex, which I have before, where you're like not really into it that night. There's a possibility that if you get pregnant on the night you're not interested, your child might start to feel like you're not interested in them.
Right.
And you don't know why your child feels that when you're always there trying to show them that you're interested and helpful.
And we're not saying that like you have to hyperfixate. Like when you're trying to, and I knew this before I had my first baby. Yeah. And, it's important to not hyperfixate and to not be like, how am I feeling right now? And worry a whole lot about it. But, you want to create as healthy as an environment as possible, which is why I think that comes up. But
also, I just like people to know that because some of you might have kids already and they're like, they came out with these certain thoughts and feelings that you're having to struggle with and you don't understand why they had it. Well, a good key to figure it out is think about what you were doing and what you felt at the time of conception, and it will help them to work through it better as you look at it, right?
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that kind of stuff.
I know, but I just had to say it.
But I know I love that.
To feel
because it is really important to understand both sides of it, and I hope that I haven't heard any new studies about the egg stuff. They just barely started into the semen, and of course, women normally do this. Are the second looked at when it comes to that kind of stuff.
There's a study on the women's side of it with mice and nurturing.
Oh, that's right.
And I can't remember, what it's called. We might be able to put it into our comments or something or description. But there are. I'm sure there's more newer ones, but this is the one that's coming to my head is older, but it was really good. It did a lot about explaining about the mother and the nurturing of the mother with the mice and the ones that next were, having babies and how they
acted. Yeah. So, okay, really quick, in case anybody doesn't know what epigenetics is, I realized I said that and didn't really say anything about what that is.
I always get confused myself.
So, epigenetics is that basically the concept or the things that are affected by your personal behavior and your environment. So it's kind of falls into the argument of nature versus nurture. But basically it's that the behaviors that you take, the environment that you're in, can change the effect of your genetic makeup and change the way that your body reads your DNA. So
that's a good way to say it, reads your DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh man, I was trying to think what oh crap, I forgot what I was going to say about epigenetics, but I don't know if there's what much more. There's a whole lot of things
like
about
choices.
the DNA.
It's about choices too. And there's studies done about even if you are involved in pornography and how that affects it too.
Yes.
So there's like tons of things out there that can affect our DNA. And,
well, even, exercising is one that people understand a lot because they've done a lot of research on how exercise affects us. Yeah. But also one that's, I don't know, making a comeback right now is breathing.
Oh, yeah. Well, for us, it's a big deal because we had asthma that we've had to work with in our life.
And I think with COVID and a lot of things of people's lungs being affected, that at least there should be a new emphasis on learning to breathe properly, and how it affects you. And, because people now have a name for anxiety and experience it a lot more because we don't have, like, our brains are not supposed to have this amount of stimulus in life.
Right.
And we're not experiencing the same sort of things that would have given our ancestors anxiety. So our brains struggle to understand how to purposely and healthily place anxiety in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't match the, historically, the kinds of stresses. In some countries it will, but in ours it doesn't, for sure. And so the people, your genetic makeup is interpreting it as a certain thing, and it doesn't know how to do it because we're doing other things that aren't the same. And for us, we think, oh, well, everything's great. Why am I feeling anxious? But the genetic programming is something different.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I've loved the jokes on TikTok about, like, oh, my Irish ancestors looking at me, or my, ancestors who survived this war looking at me, getting upset about not being brave enough to send an email or whatever. Like there's a lot of really funny things, people being aware.
That's cute.
But anyway, breathing and doing these, the activities that you do daily affect not just the way that you feel, but they affect the way that your body reads your DNA, and it affects the way that your children's bodies will read DNA.
Yes. And
so there's a lot there, and that is just like a whole can of worms. It's like
there's a lot.
There's a lot to get into to talk about that. So let's just move on to the next one now, because we don't want to just focus on that DNA concept. Okay. So I want to talk about the shared experiences that we have with our ancestors. So one interesting thing actually just happened a few weeks ago for me with one of my clients. She was getting a reading. I was doing just what is that called? Just a cold reading. And different things were coming up, and all of a sudden, one of her ancestors came and asked if she could share some information. And so I asked my client, are you okay? Like, an ancestor's here. I don't know who, what ancestor, just a grandmother.
Stop you. I want you to look in the camera more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm worried.
Okay.
That's all.
No, that makes sense.
Again. Sorry, Ty.
Okay, so I want to share a story with you guys about that happened just a few weeks ago with one of my clients. She was getting a cold reading from me, and that's a reading that you do without using cards. So we were just doing regular stuff for her right then on what she was going to be needing or what she'd be thinking about for the future. I can't quite remember what exactly that was, but one of her ancestors came and asked if she could talk to her. And so I asked her, are you okay if this ancestor of yours talks to you? She says she has something to say, but I don't know what it is, right? So she says, yes, okay, that's fine. So this ancestor comes and, and I don't really know fully what's going on for my client. And I'm just, repeating what I'm hearing from the ancestor, which she's saying, she was showing me like images of her being around people and people not understanding her really, and people thinking she was kind of simple, and people not really knowing how to interact with her when she became a mother, these different things. And my client was crying because she was like, that's exactly what I've been feeling. And, the specific things that the ancestor said that, that I didn't even, I didn't necessarily know that my client was experiencing.
Right.
But she was going, oh my gosh, that's the same way that I feel. I feel like, people, my family's viewing me as simple, or that my family's not understanding how to connect with me, or appreciating. This was kind of like the overarching thing from the ancestor, was like a lack of appreciation for being a mother that does things intentionally and loves to be with her kids. That was kind of like the overall thing. And for my client, being able to hear that shared experience really gave her comfort and gave her, I think, like a different lens to let some, acceptance of how other people are, and allowing people to stay the way they are, but also opening up the space for her to be more comfortable just being herself and being the mother that she is, without worry about what other people think or what they do.
I think it is. We all kind of crave, to some degree or another, someone who understands us, right? Someone who gets us, or someone who's been there and goes, oh yeah, I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
I could see that could be so helpful in strengthening you on your journey, to keep you going in the right direction, even though you might sometimes feel alone.
Yeah.
Or misunderstood, right?
Yeah. And and it helps in the middle of struggles to remember that somebody's already done something. When you're starting something new, when you're experiencing new things, or even when, you're not necessarily experiencing something you haven't experienced before, but that's still really hard. Knowing even that you've done it before helps you, and knowing that other people have done it, it shores you up, builds you up, and helps you to feel confident to be able to do things.
That's such a good example, really.
I forgot to write stories for this one. Okay.
Do you want to go to the next one, or do you want to do comfortable with gifts? Because
we wrote like programmed in negative patterns from shared experiences. So that does have stories. And comfortable with gifts because of ancestors. So that has a few of the stories that you wanted to share.
What was the programmed in negative patterns from shared experiences?
Okay. So guys, one thing that can happen is when we have shared experiences, like my client and her ancestor, there can be positive things from that, but there could also be negative things, because sometimes our ancestor makes a decision about people or about the situation. Like maybe this ancestor, instead of having a positive experience, maybe she had, in a pretend world, had negative experience where she decided to stop being the mom that she was and be the type of mom that other people could understand better. Oh, yeah. And that decision and that need to cover up what was really there transfers. And it transfers not only energetically, but also, right, her kids would have seen that and then copied that and done the same thing. So when we're talking about, the negative taking on the generational burden, basically, we're not just talking about like a random energetic thing, but we're talking about, even just the physical seeing and the taking that on. But that eventually turns into something that doesn't even need to be seen. In order to be taken, it becomes that thing that used to be nurtured that now becomes your nature,
Yeah.
as it goes through the generations. So, you know, and I'm sure that everybody can think of at least like one thing, right? A shared family thing, something like that, where you go, okay, yeah, this is like a shared hard thing for me, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. But one story that I would like for you to be able to share is, you know, how do you become comfortable with your gifts, spiritual gifts? How have you done that because of your ancestors?
Okay, so that's actually like huge, but I had different levels of it in my life, and I think all of us will experience that concept of we learn a little here and we learn a little there. Line upon line concept and precept on precept, we start building onto it. But as a child, I was not comfortable. I was not encouraged to tell my parents about what I was seeing and feeling. And whenever I did, I really was terrified to say anything. So whether it was through my dreams or anything, right? So, and I have mentioned about when my grandmother came to me in my dream to help me. And as far as like the moment I started embracing that she was there with me as well, she acknowledged that by her being in the dream and giving me that information, she was acknowledging to me without actually saying it that it was okay that I got information this way that I dreamed, right? So that was one layer, but really my mother, on my mother's side, she
was a dreamer too.
She was, but she never listened.
She listened one time.
One time. Yeah.
At one time that we know about. I'm assuming we're talking about the same one.
I bet we are.
After her husband died.
Yep. That was my grandmother. So my grandmother had her husband who passed away. She was trying to figure out what to do financially.
This is in the 20, 40, 30,
in the
where
20s.
20s.
It was late 20. Oh, wait, no, it had to be later than that. It had to be in the 30s. It was in the 30s, late 30s. And my grandfather came to my grandmother and told her, because she was in a new relationship with a husband that was a mistake, apparently.
Wait, but was she...
And she needed... Oh, no,
she wasn't married.
It was
she wasn't married
one.
yet.
Yeah, I'm totally getting my stories mixed up. Sorry. Okay, so he passed away. She didn't know what to do.
Yeah, they had a house in New York.
Yeah, in New York. They lived in Queens. And he came to her and said, rent out this space, and that will get you an income. Because she had 3 children, and she needed to be able to... support all of them, because he was the main breadwinner at that time.
Yeah.
And so that is what she did. But he came to her, and she did have dreams throughout a couple other times, you're right, that we know of. But the one ancestor I was thinking of was the
even
one
further
before
back.
her.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was the one before her. So it was my one great grandmother back. So first great grandmother. And she was someone who helped find lost children.
Oh, yeah.
And she would, people would come to her, a lot of times even policemen would, and ask her to help find someone. Most times they were already passed away. Sometimes it was murder. Sometimes it was just, an accident.
Right.
But she happened upon doing that. One was a murder. And she knew everything and where to find it. And the normal police people that she worked with were not the ones that she was working with this time. So I guess it was like in another precinct or something that she was used to working at. And it was so suspicious to them that she knew.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that they put her in jail. But they put her in jail is in the late 1800s. And that was not okay to my great-grandfather. He was very upset, and from that point on, he was totally against it.
Yeah.
Don't help anyone. Don't do these things. And so, consequently, through the years on my mom's side, they started ignoring it, to the point where my own mother would have dreams and just poo-pooed it.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's not even a thing.
Attention. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So genetically, that came along. It had to go through a certain amount of generations, I believe, to get to me.
Yeah, to be an automatic response, right?
Yeah.
That's what it becomes. You have a decision that's made by somebody. And a lot of times in these intense moments where, that would have been a really hard decision for her to make. And, that would be jarring, and things that jar us affect us.
Yep.
On a chemical level.
And it was not, so I didn't know that story though. I didn't grow up with it. It was stored in my mother's memory. And when I started being honest about my gifts and coming forward with it, then she goes, and I was very uncomfortable. Remember, I did not, my mom, I was always afraid to let them know what my gifts were in my family. And so when she finally found out, she struggled. You could see her struggle a little bit. But in the end, all of a sudden she goes, well, there's this story. And I'm like, I wish I had known that.
I wish I had known that.
Because then I maybe wouldn't have felt so scared and alone for so many years. I would have known that my ancestor struggled like that too. Yeah. And had gifts like that, and it was okay that sooner or later you can figure out what to do with it, right? Yeah. And how to use it in your life. But that was one that was like,
so it can be relieving, right? It brought relief to you to know there was a shared experience, and it helped you, like we'll talk about in just a little bit, to more accept yourself and understand your own struggles and things. Yes. One thing that it also helps us to do with these shared experiences, like my mother-in-law's side of the family, she has an ancestor who's so cool. He's so cool, and his name was Spider. Okay,
yeah, I remember you told me about.
He's really cool, and you see pictures of him.
Spider.
Yeah, he's there are pictures of him from the 1800s. From I can't remember when, right? Photographs of the 1800s, but you see those pictures and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is so cool. And people loved him, and he had this charisma that people just loved to be around. And it's fun because that feeling that you get from the stories about him and the pictures that you see where he's just so cool. He's like really tall, and he's just called Spider. That's what everybody called him. And
I'm going over to Spiders tonight.
And you can see it when you look at that side of the family. You see that in them, and the that shared pattern of that, but also just like that fun shared experience of being somebody that is charismatic and is memorable. So it's it could be really fun in those shared experiences.
That's a super positive one. I love that. Yeah. So the next reason why you should connect to ancestors is because of what it teaches you about yourself and your own experiences on Earth, your own purposes, and why you're here. Our family can provide a much needed mirror into our lives, a much needed mirror to see ourselves as we really are, as well as what we do and need to do to improve, not just improve our spiritual being, but to improve our experience of life, and being on this earth, and the experiences, and the trials and stuff. So, and it helps us to be able to avoid the same ending and the same pains and struggles that they faced. And if not avoid, overcome it easier.
Yeah.
And by asking what else is possible, by connecting to our ancestors, we're able to see what else is possible. Because remember, our ancestors are also looking from hindsight. And they help us see something a little different than what we would see without them.
Yeah.
If they've gone through it, they'll go, I remember that. I was there before. These are things I didn't think about that I wish I had.
Yep. Like, man, I wish I had known about that. That would have been good.
Yeah. And I mean, that's all done from a place of understanding and instead of fear, right? We don't need to have the fear. A lot of times our fear can dissipate if we understand that it's been done before, it's been gone through, and and we can overcome this.
Yeah. Thanks, Coco, for that loud toot. She does not toot this much.
Yes,
This is bugging me. She switched dog foods this week because they didn't have hers. Maybe she relaxes around you. And she toots more around you because she's relaxed. Oh my gosh.
And just to add on to what we were saying, we do not need to be like those in our family.
Yes.
We don't have to come from a place of fear as we're trying to heal and grow and connect. We can come from a place of peace and understanding instead.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand your family's natural weaknesses, because it helps you to put into a framework the things that you struggle with and have an understanding of why you might struggle with one thing more than somebody else does. And, for instance, drinking is a really huge issue on your side of the family. Mm-hmm. Whereas on my dad's side of the family, it's, not being able to stop working and not being able to relax or calm down, really, just have downtime. That's really hard. Yeah. And, in my husband's family, they struggle with being able to maintain relationships and to put, they have the yearning to have close connections. Yeah. But if the person isn't physically near them, it's very hard to create something.
Right, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind for them.
Yeah.
And they don't mean to be mean about it.
Yeah.
That's something genetically and generationally that has gone on for so long.
Yeah, which has been just as important for my husband and I to be aware of as the drinking on your family. Mm-hmm. It's just as important because both of those things affect life a lot.
Yes.
And, when you hear these cautionary tales from ancestors, those are important because, like you said, they help you to make a different decision and to live your life differently. And for those of you who don't come from good families, you have a lot of good cautionary tales. Yes. Yes. A lot of do's and, do this, don't do that. And you can take that information and be grateful, even though, and we'll talk about in another podcast dealing with unhealthy ancestors and stuff. Right. But, you can take the good and find out, what can I do with this information? And I think also, guys, it's sometimes good for a laugh because you have your one ancestor in the Civil War that always makes me smile. It's just...
So the story is that one of my ancestors joined the army in the Civil War. He was going to fight. And by the way, he was on the South. He was a Confederate person, yeah. So he's all excited. He signs up, gets drunk, and, he's yelling crazy, climbs on a wagon and falls off and dies.
Yep, hits his head in a rock and just dies.
So, we always say, he fell off the wagon, like when someone
used to drink
or doesn't drink and then he drinks again, he fell off the wagon. But we always laugh because that really happened, only it was reversed. He drank and then he died. So
yeah, so for us that's been a funny thing. Yeah. And a reminder of hey, don't drink.
Right. I mean, honestly, his full intent and intention was totally lost because of his weakness that he didn't deal with. He just always gave into it. Yeah. So, I have used it as a cautionary tale. I have not used it though to make my children afraid. I've tried to make them laugh about it and try and see the humor, but still get the message that our family does not do well if we're drinking.
Yep. And, I didn't have to look far to learn that lesson with that story. I didn't need that story.
Yeah, I have a lot of siblings.
That helped me to learn that. But, there are, hard stories to hear that are important. And, my brain keeps just thinking about the ones from your side of the family. So I'm trying to think about one from Dad's side of the family. Oh,
well, Mother May.
Yes.
You want that one?
No, I just thought of a different one, but I actually
Okay.
don't know if we're allowed to talk about it.
Who
Grandpa
is-
Lou's mom.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Okay.
you can talk about that one.
Okay.
We're comfortable. Everyone's comfortable with it.
Okay, I just wasn't
Yeah,
sure all of a
yeah.
sudden how
That
many
was a
people.
good question.
Okay, so we were talking about stories. Now I forgot because I was like really thinking about
That
what
we
was.
learned.
That we learn from. Learn what not to do.
Yeah.
So my dad's dad did not have a very good relationship with his mom. Now I don't really
Yeah.
know the story very well, so you
So-
might have to tell it.
So Grandpa Lou, what happened was his mom, and this is in the 20s that it happened, or early 30s, where his mom and dad divorced.
Right.
And so does that help you get going? Because I want you to tell the
Well,
story.
I mean it's hard because I don't remember the whole of it. I just know that she had a kid with
Yeah.
somebody else and didn't tell anybody.
Okay, so I'll tell that. Okay, so she divorced, and unbeknownst to the rest of us, she actually was having an affair
Okay.
with someone else whom she married. So Grandpa Lou's mom and stepdad, he didn't know that was his stepdad, and he also didn't know that. No, wait. I am getting it reversed. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so they divorced, and Grandpa Lou was conceived from the affair.
Oh, okay.
They were conceived. He was conceived from the affair, but they got married, and so he grew up not knowing that his mom was married before.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. I was reversing those concepts, and so he grew up with his mom and dad and brother later on, and no one knew that that she had been married before, and unbeknownst to them, had had a daughter from the previous marriage. The husband kept the daughter. So he grows up, and I almost think that they even told lies about when they got married, like the wedding date, but I'm not quite sure on that. But but by the time that she passed away, they saw their wedding date was after Grandpa Lou was married.
Born.
I mean, born, yeah, after Grandpa
Right.
Lou was born. So they get married, have their child, but the child is older than the marriage.
Right.
So, and of
Like,
course,
okay.
that time is like taboo, totally taboo.
Yeah.
Which is maybe why she never
Brought it up.
brought it
yeah.
up and told the truth. But that part is what happened. And where are you wanting the?
So
There's so many things in there.
there's a lot of things in that, but I feel this, one of the struggles from that is the concealment that I feel like passed through.
They always, yes. Okay, so my husband's side of the family, they were so concerned all the time what people would think.
Yes.
All the time. And hiding things and not letting everyone see what their life was really like or who they really were. They
Right.
always put up a show, make sure no one knows.
Fear
what's
of being
really
laughed
going
at,
on. Yeah.
kind of these intense things that maybe had roots for them in their own life, but that maybe didn't. It was kind of a mix of things of like, okay, I've really experienced things that would give me a fear of that. And other things where it's like, okay, you haven't ever experienced anything.
Why are you worried about
Why are you
that?
worried about that?
Yep.
So, I just think that there are, from that one experience of her concealing that, it puts this struggle into the family. And even in, you could say, like, a loss of connection also came from this.
Yeah.
Because Grandpa with his brother, they are 10 years apart or more.
I think it's around 10.
And they lost connection with each other, and have just in the last few years starting to reconnect. And my grandpa's in his 90s, so there are these things that come that genetically like go through us that create these struggles for ourselves. And as as Grandpa learned about this story, he probably would feel a better understanding about himself as to why he felt certain ways around his mother, or certain things that he noticed in the mother's relationship with the father. There's a lot of things that come from understanding those kinds of things.
Yeah. And they didn't talk about her past.
Right.
He had no context except to know about her childhood, but not what happened in the years before she got married, where she was or anything.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
So when you look back at your ancestors, and if you don't have stories about your ancestors, and if you can't find them, look at your immediate family. Your immediate family is going to teach you things too about yourself, and you can always find some good in the hard things. Your ancestors, your family can teach you things that you're really good at, and things that you struggled with. Yeah. And that you can potentially know that you could struggle with that in the future. Like, I haven't ever had alcohol because I already know that would probably be too much, because I can smell fresh beer and it smells so good.
Yep.
So I already know. I don't have to experience that. Yeah. So they already experienced it and I've already seen it. I don't have to participate in that.
Right. And hopefully that helps, your kids too.
Yeah.
To ease their burden.
And there's things, like when I was younger, I did debate class and I was really good at it. I was like, wow, that was really weird. I was really good at it. And I came home and I told you about it because I had just randomly put it on. And then I found out that you had been really good at debate class, and that, looking back at our family, we were always good at talking our way out of things, or, just using our voice and our words and things to create this scenario and the things that we wanted to happen. Yep. So that was used for good and for ill.
Yes, it was.
And there was that learning experience, because I had noticed that I was able to sway people with the things that I said, and that was scary to me. I talked to you about it, and you even, I think, shared a few things of
I told you
the
how
negative.
When I realized I could do that, I quit. Like, it shut me down totally, because I realized I didn't want that responsibility at that time. And so I closed it down completely at that time, to the point where when we started working on our business and stuff, I had to really push to make it come back.
Yeah.
I'd worked on it in little increments in certain ways, but I was not comfortable with it because I was still in that fear place of when I was a little kid, a teenager. Yeah. Or a college student, actually it was, but yeah.
Okay.
It's the final reason.
I'm just making sure that. Okay, guys, hopefully this has triggered some thoughts in you and helped you to think about, what things can you start learning from the past about your own struggles that can help you with your own struggles right now, and to be aware of what weaknesses you have. So we're going to move on to our final reason on why you should care about doing ancestor work. And it's that it has the ability, the more that you work on your ancestor stuff, you have the ability to lay the groundwork for healing for the past, present, and future. And I know this can sound kind of fluffy or woo-woo, or, what are you guys talking about? So let us clarify before you worry about it. Because in reality, you cannot heal for other people, and you cannot, expect to do spiritual work for others. And there are going to be people that say that yes, you can, and that you can make spiritual decisions for people, and no, you cannot, because we have free will.
Yep. And even on the other side, free will.
There's still free will. But the things that you choose to heal, the things that you choose to change, can affect other people. And your ancestors can still see you.
Yep.
And can talk to you and can learn still.
Yeah.
And, you know, like we were talking about with the DNA and the epigenetics, as you make these changes, it changes things for your children. Yeah. And even if your children are not growing inside your body right now and they're outside of you, there is still the ability that they make the changes because you made them. Just like when you start eating healthier and your body starts to change, when you start bringing in healthy concepts to yourself, it starts changing the outer things. So, you know, what it is about is creating a new blueprint, a new way to interact with your struggles and with the hardships that you encounter in life.
Yeah, so I'm going to say yes to blueprint ideas because it's really good, because it creates a blueprint that if you create a blueprint, that means you are working intentionally with your life and what you are trying to achieve. And when you do that, it's going to ripple out. It's going to ripple out not just to your kids, but believe it or not, it ripples out to the other side too. And that affects them. And I have seen many times when I've helped someone in their healing where an ancestor comes forward because they have dealt with the same, they want to let it go too. They want to overcome it finally.
Yeah.
They finally have an awareness of what they did and they want to do it too. They want to heal too. And so they come forward. You're not healing for them. It's like you're making a space. It's like you say, come on in. We're all going to have a chat today about this. And we're going to work together as a group to figure this out and heal.
Yeah.
And make it so we're all able to move forward.
Yep.
And so I love that about blueprints. They're just amazing for us.
Yeah. And I love that, what you're talking about, creating this space. And you know, I've had special moments of this in my life of creating space and like this concept you're talking about, like ancestors, everyone coming together. Okay. I feel like I've done kind of a roundup session with people like, okay, I'm bad at spelling. Is anybody else around here bad at it? You know, for my ancestors. Yes, I'm bad. I was bad at it too. And then, you know, also the ancestors that go, oh, I was phenomenal at spelling. But they were in the medieval times. Yeah. Where you could spell it
phonetically.
Yeah, spell it how you hear it. And that's the way I do it. So, you know, so it's also kind of fun, you know, to see like, oh, you know, something that doesn't work now worked for my ancestor.
Yes.
You know, it worked for them then, but not for me now. And that, I think that's such a fun thing.
That's hilarious.
You know, when we talk about creating space for things to change, sometimes it feels like when we have so many things pushing in on us, and when you start to understand how many things affect your behavior, how many things affect the choices that you make, it feels overwhelming, and you can start to feel like there's too much, and you can't, you know, you start to go, is there any free will? Am I ever making any decision or choice on my own?
Right. Yeah.
You know, it starts to feel chaotic. So when you start to do work, though, it starts creating that space around you. And the space around you allows you to examine the things that you're feeling, the things that have happened, and create that room for other people to do the same thing. Right. It's kind of like if everyone's running around being crazy, and then there's that one person that just, somebody else sees that, and they go, oh, I want to do that too.
Oh, I could do that.
I could do that. I didn't know you could do that. I'm doing that right now. Yeah. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to allow. And I feel like, you know, you can see this happen in real time. And growing up, I saw you doing this, right? Trying to find ways to create that space out of all of the chaos and to try to create a new blueprint, because your family was not easy.
No.
And you wanted to create something better with the intention, or maybe with the knowledge, right, that you weren't going to be able to do it perfect.
Right.
But that it would create a stepping stone for me to be able to do it even better, you know, for this like concept of stepping up, continually being able to do more.
So a lot of people have this philosophy that I don't really agree with, which is that every generation is going to get better.
Right. That it will naturally.
naturally gets better. And that is garbage to me.
Yeah.
You really do have to have a purpose and intent to improve something. You have to have an awareness that something's not right before you can make something better, right? So my dad said that philosophy to me, and I consequently don't believe him. Because he's wrong. It got worse, not better in our family. Because if you're not going to be an intentional parent in creating the space for people to learn and grow and feel supported and loved, and it's okay to have struggles and trials in your family. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm saying that you provide the place where they can learn and grow, and you're there to help teach them along the way. So my parents didn't really do that very well, and consequently things got worse. They went downhill way worse for my parents and our family. But for me, I had to figure it out. I had to make my own blueprint. I had to decide how I wanted things to look. Now, the trick with all of this is I didn't know what normal looked like. And so I was trying to find normal too. And I was blessed because I did finally find a counselor that could talk to me about what the average person deals with in life,
Right.
you know, and what it can look like even if it's not perfect. And because of that, it helped me as I created this blueprint to understand that it could be okay if if things aren't always perfect or if they're messy and stuff. But I first had to have that blueprint. What was I trying to do? What was I trying to create? Just like a real blueprint, you create this blueprint, and this is your idea of what your house is going to be. But the thing with the blueprint, people are changing them all the time in the midst of building. They'll be like, "Oh, we can't do this. What we thought we did, or we measured wrong, and we have to fix this."
Right.
And so you have to be willing to have that flexibility in your blueprint, and teaching your children as well as working on yourself has to be so intentional like that.
Yeah. And I think, this concept where we're trying to make sure that you create something better. I think, one thing with people who have immigrant families that they can struggle with their parents the parents want them to have it easier and want them to have it better, but at the same time hold bitterness.
Yes, they will
that it is
resent
better.
it. A lot of immigrant parents come here wanting something better, but at the same time resenting that their kid doesn't have it the same way they had it.
And
that's so hard.
And that's not just with immigrant parents. I mean, it has the possibility with anybody.
I mean, some of my siblings can't stand it if their kids have it better than them.
Yeah, and they can purposely make it worse.
Yeah.
Just be like, "Oh,
things just
well,
so
I didn't
you
have
know what
this."
it's like.
Yeah. There are people that do those things. And and it can be hard to, I think, I don't know if it's a let go of ego or what it is, to be willing to be like, okay, it was really hard for you to not live in anger, right? You had to really work through anger. But, when you see Colin and he's not angry all the time,
I'm like in heaven.
You're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And even though it might be hard every once in a while to go, man, I wish, because he's going to have a baby soon and maybe, he's never going to get angry. Who knows?
Well, I'm hoping there's anger in life,
regular,
a normal kind of thing, but that they deal with it maturely.
Yes.
And they don't take it out on their kids or, have horrible relationships with their spouse because of their anger.
Right. Yeah. So, something that I love about you is that you've let that space be there. You created the space after you worked on that anger so much for you, and you held as much space as you could during the time you were working on it.
Yeah.
You held that space and you expressed, like she always expressed, okay, this is I'm dealing with a lot of anger right now. There was a lot of anger in my family, and I'm trying to learn to do a new way, and I don't know what that way is all the time.
Right, yeah.
And so she held this space for herself and for us being her kids growing up with that. And it helped me to understand, to have a real life experience of, okay, here is something that wasn't very good that came from your growing up, because I didn't know about all the things.
Right. I would tell you guys just little bits and
just
pieces,
age appropriate.
So they wouldn't be burdened.
Yeah. And so, okay, here's her anger, but she's creating this space around in order for me to know how to deal with it. And of course, taught me how to deal with my anger when it came up. Some things that I know, like right now, I've been having things come up from when you were my age, or you had, that time period of the anger that wasn't as rational.
Yeah.
And I'm having to deal with that because I saw it.
Good for
and
you.
that's like
Good for you.
a hard thing. Like, oh man, I've had to ask myself how much of my anger right now is, really,
time period.
really me, or from the time period of what I saw.
Yeah.
And learning to process through that. That's,
That's brilliant.
that's a lot. But because you did what you did and you created that space, I have the opportunity to examine it another step and to
Yes.
catch it even sooner.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff is just
I love
amazing.
that.
I love you.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful.
And it's hard work. And I think that's the beauty too of doing ancestor work, is that you took something that happened that wasn't good and you helped me. We're crying, guys.
Sorry.
You helped me to know how to do it different, because the anger that I felt, I've gone, oh my gosh, like this has been overwhelming. I don't want to have anger towards my children. And it's put a new light on you and your struggle. And also given me peace, because guess what? I love you, even though you were angry at me.
Forgiveness is a great blessing, you guys, because it allows your kids to move on too.
Yes. And I know, because I know that, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm dealing with. And Emmy's going to be able to forgive me because I have your blueprint of showing how to do it, and it makes me excited because maybe Emmy will get to the next place and she's not going to have that knee jerk. She'll be able to have the really quick
and awareness. Of
yes. And that is so exciting. And if, my mom hadn't made that space, then it would have been even harder for me. If she had ignored that anger and just said, this is just how it is, that would have really affected me. That would have really affected my babies.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is like the crux of why you should do ancestor work, right? Because, and this
It's for your children.
for your children,
To me, that's what it ends up being.
yeah, of just, how can you make it better? And, when we talk about, being an intentional parent and being an involved and loving parent, a lot of that is you're working on yourself and you are making it better and learning from the past, because there are those generational patterns that we all have to break.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful and amazing.
I do too.
Okay.
So this is kind of weird. I think I'm just kind of popping it out here. But what makes our struggle so beautiful? People talk about, I forget the word right now. I don't know why I can't remember. But it's like a beautiful mess, right? They'll say things like that. Mm-hmm. It's not that, hey, I have a messy life, that's beautiful. It's that we come out understanding some good and beautiful things.
Yes.
And that's what makes a beautiful mess. Not this excuse that people like to say, oh, I'm a hot mess. Oh, I'm like, if you're a hot mess, then you need to work on it a little bit, because you don't want to be a hot mess. You want to get to the place where you're beautiful and the mess becomes something that's beautiful. You organize it. You create something from it. You don't just stay in the mess, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it doesn't matter if you've already finished raising your kids or if you're in the midst of it or you are just starting out in life. You figure out this need that you have within you, whatever that is, to create, to be something better or more than you thought you could be. And you pass that along in your learning and growing and your studying things out, and just like for me, ripping off the old icky garbage and trying to figure out something different. All of it is worth it because it's better for you.
Right.
Because you brought me some grandkids that I have faith are going to be raised kindly and with awareness and care and safety in their heart, in their environment of their home and hearth, right? So it's not always like I didn't see all the time right away when I'm doing my own work and working on myself. I didn't see the benefits all the time. It wasn't until sometimes after you guys grew up. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, my kid was so amazing just then. They dealt with that really well.
They dealt with that. Wow, that was
That
good.
was amazing. I'm so proud of how they didn't lose it when this person just went batshit crazy on them.
Right.
You know, I was like, I would be amazed. And then that's when all of a sudden I went into that place of how they did that because you did what you did. You worked on what you worked on.
Yeah.
So that I love that. So ancestrally, yes, but also we work for our children.
Yeah.
And our children's children.
Yeah. And, you know, as you worked on your things with your struggles from your family, you had, you know, certain, you know, sisters and a brother that were also trying to work on it.
Yeah.
And
it rippled out.
It rippled out. And so, you know, it's helping the present because, you know, wherever you presently are and you start working on your ancestor stuff, it affects you and it affects your family and other people who have painful, hard things from their family. We all help each other when we do this. Then the past gets to start to heal because we learn a new forgiveness, a new awareness, and helping us to create this connected space where love can exist now. And time is kind of funny because it's like your ancestors are gone, but they're still here. And there's like, you know, just weird things. So they get to see that, you know, and the ancestors that you have where that strong anger, you know, like when my mom was born, my grandma says she had righteous indignation. Yeah. That came from her, but also, you know, there's a lot of ancestor stuff of this righteous indignation. And, you know, so now they've gotten to see how did she do it? But then they also get to see the effect that it has on me and my children and can choose. Maybe when they first saw it, they were like, that looks like a stupid thing to try to do. But then as they see it play out, they're like, okay, I'm seeing the fruits of this. Okay, I think I'm going to make some decisions differently here. But then, yeah, it changes our future and, you know, puts you know, like you're talking about this confidence of you did that and you taught me. You know that because of who I am, I'm going to teach my children. And I can know in my children that they are going to work to teach their children, and it can move that way. Right. But and it so has to be one purposeful.
Way my dad's concept is
right. It could
correct.
Be right.
It could be right if it's intentional.
If it's intentional, and if you teach that intentionality and you teach how you do it, because I think one hard thing is people forget to teach how to do it.
Yeah.
How they did it.
They're just like, I gave you a good life. Why aren't you doing it? And it's because you didn't take the time to show them how you were giving them a good life and what you had to do and what is expected of them to encourage the next generation.
Yes, you know, it has to be taught in order to be repeatable. So,
which is extremely hard for me, you guys, because I'm not a natural teacher. I do not look at myself as a natural teacher. I'm like a forced to hesitant teacher, hesitantly being a teacher. And so, yeah, it's been difficult for me in my life to find the words all the time to express to my kids because I was not encouraged to express things in my family.
Well, guys, we're out of time. And I'm really excited though because we actually didn't even get to a lot of our ancestor stories.
Yeah.
So we are going to be doing another one where we talk about the good and the bad.
Yeah, and I think honestly, ancestors and ancestor stories and stuff like that, you can do quite a few different angles on that. And you guys probably have some stories yourself where you have experienced your ancestors coming into your life and encouraging you or helping you.
Or hearing a story that changed the way you viewed yourself or you viewed the world. You know, there's a
Right.
lot of things.
So many.
So you guys, we want you to share those with us if you can. So
I'd love that.
anyway, we just are so grateful to you guys, and give us a like, follow, and subscribe. And also, if you're on Instagram or TikTok, join us there at Eclipse Meditations.
Yes. Oh, I love it. We love you guys. Thank you for being a part of our community. And we hope that you guys are figuring out how to heal. And we hope you understand now why ancestry work or working with your ancestors is important.
Bye.
Bye.